See that tree out there? Out your living room window, or your bedroom window, or your kitchen window, wherever you are right now in your pajamas. Look at that tree out your window. Now go, chop it down. Oh, and here's an axe you can use to do that. Now go do it. You'll get it down, but it might take a while. I'll tell you what. See that tree out there, out that window? Here. Here is a chainsaw. Now go do it. How grateful would you be for this instead of just this? With an axe, the power is all you know? You got it in you to do it, and you can do it. Oh, that's not going to work. It might take a while. You got 2 or 3 hours maybe, and some weary bones afterwards chopping away at that tree. Now, if you take this chainsaw and go chop down that same tree, minutes maybe, hours saved, clean cut, easy fall. The only difference is the power you had at your disposal to chop down that tree. It is the power that does not take over, but rather a power that assists you to do it, to get it done. Faith is a reliance on a power not your own. Faith is a reliance on a power not your own. We trust that power within and above and underneath and at our side at all times. It's always just a breath away. A power not your own. Ask anybody in AA who's working the 12-step program in their desire to recover. The very first steps are admitting they are powerless before whatever it is in front of them. And then it's about reliance on a power, turning your life over to a power that is not your own. They get it. They get it that we don't have the power all by ourselves. They've learned how to rely on a power bigger than themselves. Enter the Holy Spirit. This Pentecost Sunday, the feast of the Spirit of God, that in the mystery we call God, there is that is powerful, that is our power, that is our strength. Enter the Spirit of God as a great power to help us do life, to help us change the world. But sometimes we forget we had that chainsaw all the time in the garage. We kept saying this hanging on the wall that we forgot in the storage room in the back. There was a chainsaw in the garage, and it's ours. It's yours. You just forgot it was already given to you. It was a gift somebody gave you a long time ago. And you forgot you had it. It was just sitting there waiting to help you. If you remember, it's yours. It's yours. Somebody gave it to you, and you forgot. This pandemic has caused a great deal of stress for all of us. None of us are at our best right now. None of us. and we don't know where it's going, there is still that nagging fear that's probably a healthy fear, but it can get truly unhealthy quickly. And make no mistake about it, there is such a thing as an unhealthy fear. One thing this pandemic has done is remind us that we're really not as safe as we'd like to think we are. And any sense of safety that we had has been upended. But remember every single book of that Bible we read and have just proclaimed to you. Every single book was written in a time of crises, a time of incredible unsafety in their world. Whether you're going from Job to Jonah or Matthew to Luke or the Acts of the Apostles through the prophets, surely in those times of crises, every single one of them written in a time of crises, surely in those times of crises, the people were afraid, as probably were those who wrote those very Gospels for us at the time. We live with this illusion that we are immortal until we discover otherwise. I was talking to a guy just the other day who got the virus. Gary, I got the virus. And he was telling me, now that he is recovering, and recovering relatively quickly, he was saying the mental challenge was worse than the physical. Wondering if he was going to make it, if he was going to get worse, or if he was going to make it through that. And then thinking about his kids who depend on him, and would not be able to live in this world without him. A single parent he is. A spiritual life, and I emphasize the first two syllables of the word spiritual, a spiritual life begins to matter to somebody in those straits. And when I say spiritual life, the word spiritual really does carry that word spirit to us. Is there such a thing as a spiritual life? A life of the Spirit? There is. And it's the extra power. It's the extra power we need, and the extra power we can rely on, that we can rely on. But this power to move through obstacles that are in our way is about more than the fears of these pandemic days, way more. This power is something we need now for sure to face these fears in this time of crisis. But there's a lot of times we need a lot of extra power in our life to make it through. Marriage is hard. It's the hardest thing I could imagine a human being choosing to do in life for the rest of their lives. I can't imagine. From the outside looking in, I can't imagine how hard it gets. Oh, I know there are perks. I know there are benefits. And yet, it's still so true to say, it's about the hardest thing I've ever seen human beings do. Maybe that's why so few marriages survive. And of the ones that survive, half of them ain't worth hanging around because they're just bickering and resentful and blaming, and they take all that on and get stuck in it for way too long sometimes. But what the sacrament of marriage offers, and actually the living sacrament of marriage offers, is that it gives you the assurance that you have this extra power available to you both. You have extra power available to both of you that is at your disposal to love that turkey. It is there for you to use to love her when she's especially tough to love, to make it well over the years of a marriage. You have that power available to you in the sacrament of marriage. If you are married sacramentally, you can rest assured you got the power. And don't leave it in the garage. Rely on it when you need it. A spiritual life begins to matter to the success of a marriage. When you're having trouble mustering the courage to do something or to say something, to ask that girl or guy out for a date, perhaps, you can call on the Spirit of God, God's power, to help you go through that fear so that you will muster the courage to ask her out, to ask him for a date. A spiritual life begins to matter. And it matters even afterwards if he or she says no. A spiritual life matters in handling those feelings of rejection that are so awful. Someone you love has the virus. You can't go visit. You lost your job. Chances of getting another one are not looming on the horizon. A spiritual life begins to matter. When grief is at your door and you don't know if you can do this, a spiritual life begins to matter. And when those kids are driving you nuts, and kids, you know you drive your parents nuts, right? Because you do. Kids, you got the power in that same Holy Spirit to help you not be doing whatever it is that's causing that meltdown in your family. You got it in you to not do that if you just call on it in that moment. And parents, gosh, I don't know how you're doing it, but I know how you can do it. You can take a breath and breathe in that same Spirit. Because right then and there is when your spiritual life is going to begin to matter. I can't think of a better time than a global pandemic to set the Spirit of God free in you, to let it rip through you into the world. Cut loose that power. The very power of God is in you to be used. We need every bit of power available to us right now to make it. A spiritual life does begin to matter. And you can trust that the Holy Spirit is yours, in you, like that chainsaw in the garage, waiting for you to ask for the help so that you can call on that Holy Spirit to be your strength, to be your power, to make it through to sobriety or kindness or forgiveness or even charity. Last Sunday here, I asked you and I asked myself to be humble enough to ask for help when you finally realize you can't do it all by yourself. God's Holy Spirit is power enough. If you're a praying man or woman, now is your moment to set that power free inside of you and from beyond you where God lives, to empower you to do what is yours to do. Don't leave the chainsaw in the garage unused. You got to pull that chainsaw out of the garage and start using it now. Use what you got. And you got the Holy Spirit inside of you and all around you all the time. Use that power that you've been given to tear into that fear, to tear into that depression, to tear into that impatience with your spouse or your kids, to tear into that friendship waiting for forgiveness to happen. Tear into that laziness. Tear into anything that blocks your ability to give and to receive love. and trust. Trust that God's Spirit is in you, working through you, just waiting for you to plug into that aspect of the divine mystery and rip through this world with an energy and a love you know is yours and is more than you. There's this sense of holding on to God and remembering that God is holding on to me, my source of strength, our source of strength that is bigger than us. At the end of this homily, we're going to call on the Holy Spirit in an ancient litany we call the Litany of Pentecost. I invite you to have your own spiritual practices for inviting in this Spirit of God into your life, this power that is all yours as you need it. And do those practices throughout these pandemic days. They can really work. You got the axe. You got the power. But not nearly the power. Not nearly the power you have with a chainsaw. What would it be? A tree and Gary and an axe? Or a tree and Gary and the Holy Spirit?